Hello, happy Monday, and welcome to me, Meghan McCain's Happy Hour. I never know how to introduce this freaking show.
Yeah.
Happy Hour with Meghan McCain, Meghan McCain's Happy Hour. I don't know. We're trying to figure it
I
out.
think you need a
Everything
drink in
is
your
still
hand.
fluid. Hear that voice right there? First of all, before we
Oh,
get to her, you weren't supposed to. Everything's messed up.
sorry.
I was driving back. I drove back from Virginia Beach this morning. I'm tired. I did like a stop at Chick-fil-A, a stop at the gas station, all the things. So I'm a little tired. I'm a little casual, but it's happy hour show, so we're fine. But the big news starting out is that we have Miranda Wilkins, my
Hello.
longtime co-host, collaborator, my first producer in radio ever. Miranda and I collaborated for the first time over 10 years ago now when we worked at iHeartRadio on a show called America Now. And we have worked together in every capacity, including our podcast, which we can announce we are going to be turning this happy hour show back. It will be streamed into the podcast. So if you don't catch it
Mhm.
now, you'll be able to listen to it again. We've had a lot of questions from people about where it's going, what's happening. We just partnered with the two-way company, which we're very excited about, and we're going to turn it into all one thing. So the Citizen McCain podcast and our social media will be linking to this as well. And whether or not we keep it Meghan McCain's Happy Hour, turn it back into Citizen McCain, that's still a question mark for all of us, but that's living on the internet. Miranda, thank you so much. I'm very, very excited. She's live from her closet, but she's getting a set, so
I'm
don't
gonna
worry.
get a set. Yeah. I mean, my husband is a production designer and a set builder, and yet I live on the floor in the closet in like a dark corner of my house. So that make sense. So he's gonna build me a beautiful set finally, and it'll still be in the dark corner of my house, but it will look nice, and we'll pretend like I'm somewhere beautiful. So, that's Hollywood for you, baby.
Well, I am very excited. Our little team at Two Way is very excited to have you. Miranda also was a producer, so it's good to have just on a personal level. Nobody knows my taste in life and news better than you. Sorry, Ashley, I've known her 11 yeyears. 12? God, it's a
Yeah,
long time. So sorry. I
yeah,
love you, Ashley.
a long time. Yes.
Anyway, so a long time. I'm
You
sorry to
know
keep
how like
cutting you
they have
off.
the eras, people's era. So I've known you through all of us, and yes, I get your vibe. We got the vibe
Yes.
going.
I'm very, very excited. We're gonna pop back up on the end of the show with another friend of ours who was actually physically present and went to the Bernie Sanders AOC rally in Los Angeles. Our friend Wynn Weigel. She's gonna come on and give us a little rundown of what it was like, and we're gonna continue going from there. We're just gonna take a little beat with you, Miranda, but she's gonna stay here and come back. It's a little hodgepodge today. We're still figuring it out. Just bear with us. But Miranda, I love you very much,
I
and I'm
love
so
you.
excited team at Two Way in general and continuing to collaborate with me because I don't know what I'd do without you. Thank you very
I'm
much,
still here.
Miranda.
No drama. No, we didn't break up. I'm here. I'm
That'll
always
never
here.
happen. People that speculate that have to get a life.
Yeah,
Sometimes you're just friends with people.
yeah, you're not really. I'm a barnacle. You're never gonna get rid of me. So I'm
I'll
always
say.
around.
Same, Miranda. All right, Miranda's going to come back toward the end of the show. Thank you, sweetie.
I'll be
Uh,
back.
okay, first of all, I have two other friends on the show today. We have my friend Eve Barlow, who, again, these people really, she's a journalist, thought leader, excuse me, and owner of the best-selling sub. My Substack sucks, Eve. You do. You're incredible. It's
Good. No,
glad
your Substack's great. I love your Substack.
your Substack's like a real one, but thank you. You can follow her on Substack at evebarlow.substack.com, on Instagram at Eve Barlow, and X at Eve Barlow. We also have my friend Jamie Kirchick. Again, people need no introduction. Jamie, a journalist and the New York Times best-selling author of Secret City, The Hidden Gay History of Gay Washington. His writing has appeared in billions of publications, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, and more. You can find him on X at J Kirchick, but you don't really tweet as much as you used to. Yeah, I
No,
miss
I
it.
gave up. I gave up Twitter a couple of years ago. My husband now has my password, so anything I want to write has to be screened by him.
That's probably better.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to have you both today. Again, you're both my friends. We are also just brilliant talkers in general. I have to ask you first and foremost, Eve is Los Angeles based. Jamie is DC based, but you spent a lot of time in LA. Bernie Sanders this weekend is making the rounds in California. As we talked about, one of my friends was at the rally in Los Angeles, but he popped up at Coachella. It's worth noting that Eve, before she became a activist in the political space, is an extremely famous music critic beforehand. So you know all about Coachella. I want to show this clip, number one, of him coming in front of all the kids, telling them why they should hate Trump.
Country faces some very difficult challenges. And the future of what happens to America is dependent upon your generation. Now you can turn away and you can ignore what goes on, but if you do that, you do it at your own peril. We need you to stand up to fight for justice. Now we got a president of the United States who's... I agree.
Okay, so just a reminder to attend Coachella. It costs anywhere between $1,000 to $6,000 for a ticket, and he is currently on the Fight the Oligarchy tour with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'll just start with you, Eve, because I don't know if you've been to Coachella, Jamie. I have not.
No.
Yeah, what do you make of this? Is this a way to like reach young people? Also, he was there with Congressman Max Frost from Florida, who was at one point the youngest person ever elected to Congress.
The reason I'm laughing and I find it
Yes.
amazing is just because it's desperate and it reeks of like trying to be relevant at a music festival that, yes, is well attended, but is so far from the days of being politically relevant. I mean, Coachella is like they tick every single box of what the most popular thing is. It's the least renegade, the least anti-establishment, anti-conformist festival you could possibly appear at. As you said, the tickets to go to Coachella are extremely expensive. The last time I've worked at Coachella for probably seven or eight times for the BBC and New York Magazine and various other places, The Guardian, etc., etc. The last time I went was maybe about 2017. From memory, you can't get a meal at Coachella from even a taco truck that costs less than $25, right? Like, this is not the everyman's festival. But also, I will say, and no personal insight into my own behavior at festivals, but a lot of the people that you see there would cheer if someone in a chicken costume came on a stage. They are mentally augmented by substances. So I wouldn't say that this is necessarily, like any kind of indication of how young people in general react to or endorse certain people and certain, political views. I mean, what I think is absolutely fascinating and has been coming out more in the last, you would know more about this, Meghan, in terms of demographically where the vote came from in this election. But from the last that I have been told, there was huge popularity among Gen Z voters for Donald Trump. So, I don't think that this indicates one thing either way. And I really, honestly, I don't think that the people who observed Bernie Sanders at this moment at Coachella went home this morning and thought, what I saw at Coachella this weekend?
Yeah.
That's what I remember. Bernie Sanders, there's no way. So good luck. But
yeah, you've got Lisa from Blackpink performing alongside him. But I do want to ask you, obviously, Jamie, he's going around with AOC with this Fight the Oligarchy event. They did one in Arizona that had, I think it was 40,000 people. I have friends who went as journalists and said there was nothing to knock anything about. I told some of my Republican friends, look, I have friends in Arizona that say you need to watch this. I'm a Republican. My interests are making sure Republicans stay in power. What do you make of all these appearances and what the end game is? He's 83 years old.
Well, I'm a little afraid to admit this in a conversation with a real established music critic, but the last concert I went to was for Kylie Minogue, and that gives you a take. Okay, we do good. Okay, so so Coachella is not really my place. It is very much a throwback to Woodstock, which was a long time ago, and sort of the politicization of music, which has always been, or in most cases, been left-wing progressive. There's a little bit of that kind of 80s, Live Aid and We Are the World, that sort of stuff going on, and the giant sort of, efforts to fix hunger and whatnot. And look, people being politically engaged is a good thing, even though I disagree with Bernie Sanders on almost everything. I do think it's a good thing for people to be politically engaged. As for this tour that they're doing, I agree with you, Meghan. I've heard from lots of people that these are not to be, mocked. These are big crowds of people who are angry. And look, there's lots of reasons to be angry at the Trump administration, and I just think it's because if you look at the leadership of the Democratic Party, I think they look very weak right now, and they look like they're not doing enough to resist Trump. And without getting into a whole conversation about whether that's true or not, there's such outrage and such anger, which is understandable, that people like Bernie and AOC are really good at harnessing that and using that, and partly largely because they've never really had power before, right? If you've never had political power, it's very easy to sit on the sidelines and call Chuck Schumer, a weak coward who doesn't know what he's doing, and the whole list of things, right? But Bernie's never had political power, and I honestly think that he enjoys not having political power, because when you're someone like him, he's much more comfortable being in a place where he can be a utopian and talk about all of his utopian ideas. And he's never had to actually implement them in his entire life. And the one time he did have power, he was mayor of Burlington. What did he do? He was spending most of his time, going to Moscow, or going to all these other places, rather than like dealing with, shoveling the snow on the streets, right? So I think that's what we're seeing.
Well, just a reminder, I totally agree with that. And I agree that it's better to always be the contrarian out of power, because then you never actually have to pass a bill, because AOC does nothing in Congress.
Right.
It shouldn't pass anything. Just a reminder, my producer just told me, because I always forget this, please raise your digital hand if you want to ask me, Eve, or Jamie a question. We'd love to hear from you. Yesterday, Eve and I text almost every day. We're on like 2 separate text chains together. I love you. I wish I texted you every day, Jamie, but you are very busy. And I'm happy to.
You can text me every day. You can text me every day.
I'm going to add you to these text chains. But yesterday, when this story came out of Governor Shapiro's family having the governor's mansion basically almost burned completely to the ground during Passover weekend, I was really like upset, confused, watching the clips of him. I've been very like emotionally, he clearly looks pretty shell-shocked from it. When I think of the future of the Democratic Party, I think Josh Shapiro is a person that actually has the potential to have real power, because I think he's much more moderate and interesting. He's the governor of a very important swing state. I want to show a clip from him at this press conference, because I want to discuss the rise of anti-Semitism and why I do think we can't look away from the timing of this arsonist incident.
This type of violence is not okay. This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society. And I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, or one particular person or another. It is not okay. And it has to stop. We have to be better than this. And we have a responsibility to all be better. If he was trying to terrorize our family, our friends, the Jewish community who joined us for a Passover Seder in that room last night, hear me on this. We celebrated our faith last night proudly, and in a few hours we will celebrate our second Seder of Passover again proudly. No one will deter me or my family or any Pennsylvanian from celebrating their faith openly and proudly.
So the perpetrator admitted to harboring hatred towards Shapiro and said he knew it was possible the family would be home and potentially burn alive if they were there. He said if he ran into Shapiro, he would have beat him with a hammer. People are saying it's unclear if the motivation was anti-Semitism, but I think I'm just not a person that believes in coincidences in general. I want to read one more tweet for you. I just found this really put the point together. This person said, the fact that people are arguing whether or not it was a far-right MAGA anti-Semite or a far-left anti-Zionist anti-Semite should tell you everything about being Jewish right now. Eve, this is your wheelhouse of what you comment on all the time. What did you make of this story?
I mean, well, I'll just say that I have been reeling ever since I saw the story, because my initial reaction to seeing the photographs, I opened up my Instagram app, and my somebody that I follow had posted the interior shots of the house having been burned out. And my immediate reaction was, wait, I haven't seen these stills from October 7th before.
Ugh, God.
So, I immediately, for me, there's no argument. There's no argument against the correlation between what we're seeing come out of Israel on October 7th, what we're seeing in the West as a green light celebration of what happened on October 7th, and then the manifestation of anti-Semitic attacks all over mainland Europe, the United Kingdom, and here in America since that day. I mean, I've been talking about this, as you know, predating the October 7th massacre, and there were many instances of violent anti-Semitism before then too, that were also, by the way, every time that they occurred, the mainstream media would say, well, it's unclear what the motivation is. So I'm kind of tired of that point. Josh Shapiro's home was burned to a cinder on the first night of Passover. Him and his entire family, his 4 children, their 2 dogs, and another family that were there to celebrate Passover were all rescued from the house. The intention was to murder the family. And it's very clear to me what this is not a coincidence that it happened on the first night of Passover. The tweet about whether or not these attacks come from the extreme right or the extreme left is valid. I said this morning that, I've been kind of like banging on the bell for here in America since 2019, and in the world in general since 2014, and even sometimes before then. I tweeted today that if American Jews don't realize that you are a Jew first and foremost, whether or not you're a Republican or a Democrat by this point in time, after this story, then I don't know if you're ever going to wake up, because this should be setting off the biggest alarm bells about the threat to our lives in this country and around throughout Western civilization right now, that there is a disease, an endemic hatred against Jewish people and blaming Jewish people for societal ills. That's what this is about. So whether this person, and I've heard that this person's a registered Democrat and an extreme leftist. That's what I was told this morning. But whether this person is an extreme leftist or extreme on the right, what they share in common is a desire to blame the perpetual Jew for whatever gripe they have with society. That's what we're seeing. And that's kind of to explain what that tweet is saying. Whoever it is, they meet in the middle as to having this vested interest in painting the Jew as the ultimate criminal, as the ultimate responsibility for everything that's wrong. If you eradicate society of the Jew, then you eradicate the problem. Of course, we know that has never worked throughout thousands of years of history. So yeah, I mean, today, as I say, I'm still reeling from this story, because, as you know, I went to Israel and the Gaza envelope 3 times since October 7th. I've reported from the front lines there, and I've witnessed the aftermath of the massacre, and to see images like that in Pennsylvania, as I said, the correlation is direct for me.
Yeah, Jamie, I just think this is another warning shot that people are not paying attention to. He's an extremely prominent governor. He's very popular. He was a vice presidential, pick for Harris when she was running. Are you concerned, and what do you make of this?
Well, it's ironic. Josh Shapiro first came to my attention, and I think to the attention of most Americans who don't live in Pennsylvania, the day that President Trump was shot. When he emerged, and I thought was really almost presidential. He was very well-spoken, calm. He condemned the attack, and I thought he handled it perfectly. I'm like, who is this guy? He's so well-spoken. And he seems like he could be president of the United States. And, watching him speak that, he's clearly very upset. It's just, it's sad that he's again in the news because of an act of violence, this time one that's been directed towards him. As a journalist, I try to be really careful about running to conclusions. And just to give an example, like Eve said that she heard that he was a radical leftist. I was just reading a story that said he hated Joe Biden and had been posting all this anti-Biden stuff. And there's been so many of these horrible attacks where people rush to their side, right? They go to the blue side or the red side, and then it turns out that the person either is of the opposite, maybe your own political persuasion, or just a total crazy person who doesn't really have any definable politics. So I'm just going to wait, before I express views on the particular motive of this individual. I will say, however, that we are 25 years after Joe Lieberman became the first Jewish person on a major party ticket. And Meghan, you knew him better than I did, but I don't remember really there being any anti-Semitism in 2000. I just don't remember it. I was 17. I was a big political junkie. It was a real big deal as a young Jew to have that. I think his Judaism was actually an asset. The fact that he was even an Orthodox Jew was seen as an asset, particularly after the Clinton years and all the Michigas and the sects and the interns and all that stuff. To have a man of really firm moral rectitude and religious observance was seen as an asset to the Democratic Party. And I just don't remember there being much anti-Semitism about Joe Lieberman in 2000. And you contrast that to today, when last year Josh Shapiro, like Lieberman, was being considered to be the VP candidate. And I wrote a piece in the New York Times last fall. You can look it up, where it was all about, it was called the Democrats have a Josh Shapiro problem. And I argued that, they basically didn't choose him because he's Jewish. That he was seen as too much of a liability because he was, too pro-Israel. And we all know what that means, okay?
Yeah.
And that is such a dramatic difference from 2000, right? When you had an Orthodox Jew, okay? Like a real Jew, okay? A guy who had to walk. He walked to the Capitol, and back on the Sabbath. And Josh Shapiro is not nearly, I think he's a conservative Jew. He's not nearly as observant as Joe Lieberman was, right? And yet, it's a much bigger deal now.
Yeah,
I think that's really sad.
Every kosher restaurant on the Upper West Side because of that. And you're right. I mean, we were actually talking about this earlier, that at the time when he was chosen, people liked that he was such a family man, such a religious man. Like, people found it comforting because obviously Al Gore was attached to Clinton, who had all these sex scandals. But it really breaks my heart that it's shifted as much as it has. But I want to show a clip that's in this same vein of just how far things have gotten. So I don't know if you guys know who Hannah Einbinder is. She's the actress in the show Hacks. A few weeks ago, she made a lot of news for speaking out against Israel. I want to show this clip of number 7 because, as you said earlier, this clip made the rounds in a lot of pop culture spaces. Like, it made the rounds with, like, a lot of actors, a lot of actresses sharing it. And that always alarms me because obviously they run culture and a lot of young people watch it. But I want to play this clip really quick and then comment on it. Number 7.
Queer person, as a Jewish person, and as an American, I am horrified by the Israeli government's massacre of well over 65,000 Palestinians in Gaza. I am ashamed and infuriated that this mass murder is funded by our American tax dollars. It should not be controversial to say that we should all be against murdering civilians. I mourn for all of the Palestinian lives taken by the Israeli government, entire families and bloodlines destroyed. I also mourn deeply for the 1,200 Israelis killed by Hamas on October 7th and the ongoing suffering of the Israeli hostages. I know that calling for a ceasefire and the release of all hostages begs for the safety, security, and preservation of life of both Palestinians and Israelis.
Okay, so two quick things for me. Number one, I found it interesting that the crowd's not entirely with her in that. As someone who gives speeches all the time, giving my entire life, they're not clapping the way you should be if you're giving a speech like that. Number two, she's terrible at giving speeches. She sounds like she's doing like a phone sex hotline or something with this breathy stuff. If you're going to make a speech like that, talking about something, and again, I know what I'm talking about. You know what you're talking about. Jamie knows what he's talking about. You have to come from it from conviction and authority, and you have to be loud. So just putting on that. Why do this if you're an actor? I really like Hacks. I've been watching it. I'm not watching this season just because I don't want to give this lady anything. I just think it's garbage. And to say that I'm not for murdering civilians, but you're okay, I guess, with babies being murdered and women being raped on October 7th. What do you make of this? And normally I don't care what celebrities think, and I still don't, but I have seen this clip everywhere, and it's really daunting. And I know you've written about it, Eve.
Yeah. I mean, her show's called Hacks. Anyway, I've got a bone to pick with you, Megan, because I didn't think I would ever have to watch that again.
I'm sorry. Both of your faces, by the way, you're like rolling your eyes. So,
and I know because you look, it hits all of the notes. You ask why. Well, we know the reason why is because she wants to be part of the elite club, and in order to be in the elite now, you have to abide by the commandments that they set. And in those commandments, it includes that you have to be free Palestine and more or less anti-Israel. And she used a lot of inflammatory language in her speech that was not both sidesing anything. She was coming down hard with Hamas numbers, Gaza Ministry of Health numbers, which come from Hamas, Hamas talking points. She made lip service reference to October 7th. She's never once used her social media to say anything about October 7th, anything about the hostages. But the point that I made on Twitter immediately after this speech that I'm going to repeat, which is absolutely crucial, that I don't think enough people really hammered home, is that the entirety, the basis of Hannah's argument falls apart completely. Because what she does is she defines herself as a queer Jew. By the way, I'm a lesbian and a Jew. She defines herself as a queer Jew with respect to Palestinianism. She basically gives the condition to her Jewishness, and her Jewish identity is dependent upon there being a Palestinian people too, and a Palestinian state, and respect for the Palestinians. Palestinian identity was invented in the 1960s. The Jews have existed for thousands of years. So if you were a queer Jew before the 1960s, how are you defining your existence? Her entire argument is completely flawed. She's an idiot, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Jamie?
Well, first of all, I hate the word queer. I don't know about Eve. What? Okay. I hate it for a lot of...
I'm straight, so I don't know if I'm
Well, no, you can't. I mean, I hate it for a lot of reasons. I've written about it. I mean, one is sort of the political reason. You will never see a center-right or really even centrist gay person use that word to define themselves. It's almost entirely used by radical left-wingers. And that's really the origins of that word, right? I mean, it goes back a long time. I'm like old enough to remember what it was like being called a queer on like the playground, so I'm not into like, like recovering this word and owning it, at all. It also seems, maybe in this case too, Eve probably knows more, queer also seems to be mostly used by basically straight women who like many years ago kissed a girl, and it like allowed them to become part of this like minority community that has a lot.
It's a gatekeeping. It's gateway. It's a gateway. It's a gateway.
Yeah, I call it queer face because it's basically like appropriate. It's like appropriating. We don't use that term, cultural appropriation. It's like appropriating like gay and lesbian culture for your own selfish and in this case political needs. I mean, the fact that this was taking place at an LGBT rights event, I thought was sickening. But I mean, I didn't really recognize this listening to it, but Megan would know better than me. But, if you're saying it sounded like that she wasn't getting that much support from the audience,
She was, but you would expect waves of applause, which, is what they call it when you're training someone. Like, you have to ride the wave in order. And I also, like, it reminded me kind of like of I forgot her name, the climate change lady who's really obsessed with climate change. I'm sorry, she's everywhere. Greta Thunberg. Sorry, yes. And that Greta Thunberg was doing a rally where she started talking about Palestine, and people were like, "Hey, we're here for climate change."
Right.
Like, that's how it kind of, they were like, "We're here to talk about like LGBT.
rights.
What is this?" And the idea again that being queer means you're pro-Palestine. Like, I'm sorry, I have two guests here who are, not straight saying that. We have a question right here. I don't know, for Eve and I believe Jamie. Really quick, I just want to get it in while we still have time for everybody. But I totally agree with everything you're saying. Hi Haley, how are you? Welcome. Do you have a question for Eve or Jamie?
Well, yeah. So full disclosure, I'm Israeli American, so I am totally behind everything you're saying. And Eve, you are a hero of mine. And I mean, totally understand. So I just wanted, because you're touching on Hollywood for a second, so I just wanted to ask, I've noticed since Trump has been elected, I've noticed that Hollywood, because I actually forced myself to watch the Oscars this year, and I usually don't. I can't stand them. But I forced myself to watch the Oscars this year, and I thought it was very apolitical. Like, they tried very hard not to go into politics. But when it comes to Israel, it's like there's an exception beyond all belief. Like, that was the only thing that I can remember where they got the standing ovation and all of that. So my question is, I mean, obviously there's so many quote unquote Jews in Hollywood, but I know that they're very much on the Free Palestine side. What is it going to take? I mean, are we going to have another October 7th for them to realize what's happening and how they're being essentially either manipulated or just ignorant? I mean, I don't understand how they can be ignorant, because I'm sure half of them have been to Israel. So it's like, it's just, I don't know what it's going to take.
They're not ignorant. They know exactly what they're doing. They're making a choice. They're cowards, and they're selling their souls to remain part of the conversation and to be part of what I was already describing as kind of like this elite that has been created, that has to unquestionably, without asking questions, without debate, accept a list of societal norms in order to be considered safe. And this has been going on for the best part of the last decade. And the apex of it is now Israel. I mean, I would argue that it's always been Israel, but it hasn't come to the fore of the conversation until October 7th really exploded this whole thing, and October 8th, notably. And I believe that we have been living in October 8th ever since. It's not gone away, because we're living in this post-October 7th world where Israel is not just seen as, it's not just a state that's being criticized. It's a state in which it's socially acceptable to actively call for its total dismantling and destruction. I mean, there's no other country in the world where it's socially acceptable to go around saying, I think that from I don't know the different borders of Russia, but from the blah to the blah, Russia, no more, or the same with China, no one is, or Korea, like nobody's going around talking about dismantling any other country, no matter how horrendous they are. They actually have horrific human rights.
Except the North Koreans, they're talking about swallowing up South Korea.
Right, totally. This has become the socially acceptable thing to do. So as you say, like the Jews in Hollywood, you're asking, is it going to take another October 7th? No, October 7th's already happened. 1,200 people were massacred, raped, their houses set on fire, their bodies burned to a cinder. This has already happened. Maybe if it were them personally, if it happens to them, if they have an experience like Josh Shapiro, maybe they'll change their minds. We'll see if Josh Shapiro becomes a little less critical of the Israeli government, or a little bit more strongly pro-Israel than he has been in the past, given what's happened to him this weekend. I doubt that he will, but my point is that you know, these Jews in Hollywood, they've made a choice. They know exactly what they're doing. And that's why they're cowardly about talking it out or, you know, appearing as talking heads for anything. It's easy to put a pin on your lapel. It's far harder to have to take questions in a forum like this, for instance. They would never appear on any form of show where they would have to meet with their adversary.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I want to doff my historian cap again and look back in time to an episode that shows how far down we've come. And at the Academy Awards in 1978, I believe, Vanessa Redgrave, who was a very well-known anti-Israel activist, she won the Best Actress award. And there had been people protesting her outside, pro-Israel protesters protesting her. And she got up, and in her speech, she attacked Zionist hoodlums outside and went on this whole tirade about how awful Israel was. And not soon after her, in the proceedings, Paddy Chayefsky, who was a great American screenwriter, he wrote Network, lots of other movies. He got up, and I had to look it up, but he said, I would like to suggest to Miss Redgrave that her winning an Academy Award is not a pivotal moment in history, does not require a proclamation, and a simple thank you would have sufficed. And so, you know, and by the way, the audience, okay, which I'm sure had more Jews, if not as many as they do now, the audience gave him a huge round of applause, okay? Now contrast that to last year when Jonathan Glazer, who was the director of The Zone of Interest, he gets up and he gives a speech. He gives a speech that's basically likening Gaza to the Holocaust, right? And what happens? Steven Spielberg comes up later in the evening to present an award, doesn't say a thing. Okay, the guy who directed Schindler's List and who started a whole Holocaust archive of interviewing Holocaust survivors. You know, he's done a lot for Jewish causes. I'm not, you know, I don't want to leave the impression that I hate Steven Spielberg, but you know, he had an opportunity to say something. He had a lot of. He's probably one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. He's got nothing to lose. Like anyone's gonna, you know, like ruin Steven Spielberg's career. He didn't say anything. And so I think that's like the difference between like the tough Jews in Hollywood of like 40 and 50 years ago and the Jews we have now. Right. And I'm not saying there are, you know, there are Jews in Hollywood who are speaking out about this, right? But I mean, Deborah Messing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who just is fantastic. I'm sure Eve knows others. I mean, there are others, right? But there are a lot who are either, you know, like Hannah Einbinder and basically, you know, betraying their people, or most of them are just silent because they don't want to rock the boat.
And Haley, there's a lot of people that I know, Eve, Jamie, and I get this experience, like famous people that will like DM you or email you and be like, I'm really on your side, but I can't say it because it'll X, Y, and Z. It'll hurt my business, it'll hurt whatever. And I used to be very compassionate because I was like, and this isn't even just about Israel, but I get a lot of it about Israel. I think because I'm like a Zionist, it's not Jewish. And I'm always like, you know what, like at a certain point, silence is how the atrocities of lots of horrific things have happened, is the silent Holocaust being one of them. And I'm not going to give you your conscience cover. So it's hard for me. I mean, I've lost friends over this issue because I don't like pussies. Sorry if that's graphic. I don't relate to it. I don't like it.
One quick thing. I just think that Hollywood has made a lot of money off of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
I mean, it was their number. I mean, how many movies can we name? We can name a whole list. And the fact that they've made a lot of their money off of it, and now that they're doing this, it just feels like the biggest betrayal to the Jewish people.
Yeah, Zone of Interest was like a very intense Holocaust movie. I was shocked when that director did that. I was like, what the hell is going on? Haley, thank you so much for asking a question. We are running on time. We've got my friend Wynn coming on. Thank you so much for watching and asking a question. Eve and Jamie, you're both brilliant. Please come back soon. Make time for me. You're not pussies. I love having courageous friends who are brilliant. Come on.
I have all the time for you.
Thank you so much, both of you. You can find Eve's Substack, amazing Substack called Blacklisted, evebarlow.substack.com. She's on Instagram and X, Eve Barlow, Eve_Barlow. Jamie's on X, but he's not active. So you're just going to have to Google his work all the time. And Jamie, thank you so much for coming on. I love you both. And please, like I said, make time soon.
Thanks, Megan.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. All right, here we have my friend Wynn Weigel coming on, who was actually present at Bernie Sanders' rally. Hi, Wynn.
Hi, Megan.
Would you like to have a title here? Because you have wonderful social media. Do you want me to plug anything while you're here?
Yeah. I mean, I'm on Threads right now. That's the one I'm really loving. I know that you have mixed feelings on it, but I'm
I was like, I hate Threads.
I know you do. I'm at Wynn Weigel. I've been having fun there. I post a lot of like film and TV and a couple like political takes here and there. So
yeah, and Wynn is a film executive in Los Angeles and very smart. And obviously, you know Miranda as well. And we saw on social media that you were at the Bernie Sanders rally and you were posting pictures from the bushes.
What
was it like? Wait, just really quick, can we show the picture? We actually have a picture of Wynn in the bushes for. All right, it's just an illuminating number 10. Just sitting there to watch.
It's very relaxing. Yeah.
I was like, liberals are growing like weeds.
And can we show number 11, the video of the overflow area for us? Which you took a picture or a video of? Thank you. Number 11.
I'm talking about
that's just overflow.
Living today in an oligarchic form of society.
So how many total people were in attendance at the Bernie rally?
Inaugurated.
They said 36,000, but I can just tell you, my friend and I snuck through the gates because we didn't want to wait in like the hour-long metal detector line. Maybe,
wow,
but yeah, I mean, it was huge. It was absolutely huge.
What made you want to go? Was it more AOC or Bernie? Do you think that they're the future? It's obviously we're at this rally, you're a Democrat. Do you think that they're the future of the party? Are they people you're looking to? Because one thing Jamie was saying earlier is that because so many people in leadership in the party aren't doing anything, they clearly felt the need to like go on the road. I was saying earlier too that a friend of mine went to the one in Arizona and said it was a lot of momentum, a lot of energy, and there was a huge crowd there too. I think it was 40,000, but my numbers may be wrong. It's around there.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have very different feelings about Bernie and AOC. I mean, I was there for AOC. My friend and I actually went to the food trucks when Bernie came on. I mean, we listened sort of like while we were eating our burritos. And then we got out actually before he finished to beat traffic. Like we were really there for AOC. And, you know, Megan and Miranda, as you guys know, like I have never felt, I grew up in New England. I'm a little bit repulsed by feelings of like any sort of extremity. Like I just get very uncomfortable with any extreme on either side. And so, you know, I feel like I surprised myself even by going. I think that for me with AOC specifically, like she's the only person who made any sense to me in the days after the election. And I think it's because she took a very humble, curious position, and she went on Instagram and she saw that she had some voters who voted, you know, for her and for Trump. And she started asking a lot of questions and, you know, was just really curious and really dove into what these voters were thinking. And I found that to be incredibly helpful and comforting. It wasn't someone who was acting like they knew everything. It wasn't someone who was acting like we should all just be hiding. It was a really interesting fact-finding mission. And I loved what she had to say on Saturday as well.
What was she like live?
Well, I put this on my Instagram. I mean, this is a little grandiose, but I was like, I feel like I was seeing the political version of Beyonce. Like my
husband thinks she's going to be the first woman president, for whatever that's worth. Like he thinks she will.
Wow.
I think there's an argument to be made we were listening to Ashley and I, the daily podcast earlier, that was a business owner, veteran who owns a small baby toy company, and she's losing everything because of these tariffs. And I think where they're smart, fight the oligarchy, because there's the impression that like all these billionaires don't give a shit about the working class. So I think that's a very powerful message. It's like Trumpy sort of, but on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I have just been seeing I've been to a number of protests. I mean, like, I'm just sort of I haven't been to one. I went to a few during the first Trump administration, Women's March, one of the BLM protests. And a lot of these liberal protests are like, everyone is like, choosing their own adventure. I remember at the Women's March, there was like someone holding like a Stop Russia sign. And I'm like, okay, can we just like please stay focused?
Yeah,
here?
What's the message here? Yes.
And I think the sort of brilliance of this effort is that it's really about class conflict. And it's really about sort of the economic, every speaker is talking about the same issue. It's, there are 3 people in America who hold more wealth than the bottom 50%. And that is, I don't know, whatever political persuasion you're of, like how you can justify that. That just, to me,
anti-MAGA. It's like for all the energy that there was at these Trump rallies, we're not seeing any of that kind of momentum on the left. And now here it is. Here's what the left was needing, this momentum, this vibe, this energy shift.
Totally. And, I was incensed by these tariffs. I mean, just this sort of, they were just put in place in such a clumsy way. I mean, I'm thinking of like my mother who's dealing with my grandmother who's 97, has dementia, and she has to pay for her care out of her retirement savings. And she's managing this month to month and paying tens of thousands of dollars. And when that account is hit, like that's her family. Like this is not, and I feel like these people just did this so like haphazardly.
Yeah, I think also Republicans really need to be paying attention to this because, again, when I first heard about the crowd numbers for AOC and Bernie in Arizona with my friends who were journalists who went, and were like, it's saying like similar momentum to what we saw with Obama, like similar momentum we saw with Trump, like we really need to watch this. And then when I saw you, because obviously you're someone who's very politically engaged and inspired by her, like this is a woman who is, I mean, dangerous is the wrong word because she's very smart, but just like she could do this. And I think Republicans need to be aware that like she has a lot of support. And what you're saying about like class warfare, Miranda, and we're talking about with the tariffs, like I agree, like we've been very upset about the tariffs because just like a lot of people we know are getting hit, and the idea of like your phone breaking and someone having to pay $3,000 for an iPhone, like I guess some of my friends just like not going to have phones. Like it's crazy. Yeah. So is there anything, because like we only have like 5 more minutes, and I'm sorry, come back. By the way, if you want to come back for a win, you're always invited. I just never know how political executives are allowed to be, but you're always invited. Ask your boss, and then if they're allowed. Is there any takeaways? What would you tell Republicans right now? Again, you're a big AOC fan. Is there anyone else in the Democratic Party you think you really like right now? And what message you give to Republicans right now about this class warfare that, again, I think got Trump elected and could very well get him, that stop any Republican from getting elected again?
Look, I am seeing on the one hand, like when I call my city council person to report a homeless encampment on my corner, I don't get a call back. Like 311 is a 45-minute wait time. I once called the police because a homeless person was following me. They didn't show up for an hour. I was in my next meeting at that point. And then I see front row at the inauguration, all of these tech guys. And, where does that sort of, that nothing makes me feel less important than seeing that. Is when I can't even have like my basic needs and safety met, and then to see how much access these people get. I mean, it's, I think, infuriating. And then like I come at it from like I guess the lens of entertainment. And so what I also see in someone like AOC and also like Gavin Newsom is just a lot of star power. I mean, these people are like, they just have a lot of wattage, and I don't think that should ever be underestimated, because I'm watching all of these speeches from like one Democrat after the next, and it's just like talking points, and it's like these boilerplate. Like I was just like, this is such like, these people are such goobers, and then AOC gets up there, and it's like she's special, like she's a high wattage talent, and I don't think that should be underestimated at all.
Joe Kennedy, the Senator Joe Kennedy, was making fun of her last week. And I, again, at your own risk, I remember when people were making fun of Trump, and it's a plug line. Again, I just don't think it's not anything. You're getting 36,000 people out in LA in an afternoon to come hear you talk. And I agree. MAGA is supposed to be all about populism and the middle and lower class. And I totally agree with you. I hate the optics of all these tech bros everywhere, all these tech people. Mark Zuckerberg just bought a giant McMansion not so far away from where my friends live, and everyone's like, we're not like, what is this? Like, all these guys, again, it does seem like if you have billions of dollars and you run technology, you can have access to power right now, and that's a horrible message.
I have no problem with wealth. It's just how much power. how much power do you need? Like
buying
that's
access.
really my
buying
question.
access is the problem that I have. Yeah, I don't have working for money, having money to do it, but buying yourself access to a president or buying an election is disgusting and
I'm sorry when
un-American.
their people can't buy eggs and tariffs are about to tariff everybody into oblivion, and we have Jeff Bezos shooting his girlfriend into space and Katy Perry. I mean, come on. Anyway, Wynn, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sorry it was brief, but we didn't want to overshoot it because you have a real job. So if you want to come on and talk politics for an hour, you're more than welcome. But like I said, you have a real job. We don't want to get you in trouble. It's very, very testy out there in Hollywood.
I think one of my bosses is watching right now. So
hi. Thank you.
She did a great job. Thanks for letting us.
Lynn is brilliant, very well versed to politics, pays attention, is non-judgmental of Republicans and independents. It's a wonderful trait. Just happen to be a Democrat, but we've had so many of my Democrats on. You're not the first one. Won't be the last.
There you go.
Come back anytime, Wynn. Thank you so much, Wynn Weigel. You can follow her on Threads.
Everywhere.
Follow her on
TikTok.
Threads and TikTok.
Yes.
And Miranda, thank you so much. We'll be seeing Miranda every day.
See you on Wednesday.
All right. See you guys on Wednesday. Thank you so much. Same time, same place. Appreciate it. See you later.